Rule number one, don't open the door.
I need a little more up top and a little less down below.
Amber alert. Oh God, something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. In orbit of Uranus,
It smells.
I don't even want to talk about it.
Oh, no, you love me. You know you love me.
Just don't let it touch the...
You know, that's great, but give me a little more.
Why? Why are you shooting at me?
You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.
Hello, hello, and welcome out there in podcast and YouTube land. You have reached Johnny Has the Keys in all of your searching about for something excellent to do. This is a podcast where two old friends get together. We talk about horror and science fiction, films, television, key influences on that particular topic, and then things that topic then we talk about a variety of stuff. It's all unscripted. We don't even know what we're going to say ourselves half the time. But if you're finding us for the first time, we'd love to get to know you a little bit. Maybe, drop some money in the offering plate there, or just do the sign up below. Give us a shout out, let us know, give us a review, make a comment, subscribe to all the fun stuff. If you're returning, thank goodness you're back. We've missed you, and we're glad you're here with us. I'm here with my good friend Tim. Tim, we're both in the jungle today. It's going to be fun. What are you doing? What you been doing this week?
Oh, my goodness. That was a great introduction, a very speedy, and it covered a lot of topics. I'm always constantly thinking of, what else should I say in the beginning that I'm not? No,
right.
But anyway.
Same way.
Well, we usually start these things off with what we did in our genre week. And recently, it's been a little while back, we were doing some top fives on 2013. So I watched a lot of movies from that year. And one that I happened to catch for like the second time was Mike Flanagan's Oculus.
Oh, never seen it.
Yeah, it's pretty decent. I can't remember if it's not his first film. I don't think he did some other ones maybe before that, like sequels or something. But this one came out in 2013, and it's probably his first original concept, I guess. Because I think he did Ouija before then, and then he had like Absentia, which was like an indie, homemade film he did or whatever. Anyway,
it was Ouija 2, right? He didn't do the first one. He did
He did like a sequel, Ouija 2, Origin of Evil.
I think that's right. Yep.
But anyway, this one's a great introduction to the talent of Mike Flanagan that we both know. Just like in Hill House, in this one, he experiments with two timelines with the characters as children and adults. The editing is off the charts, brilliant. I mean, you will love the way it's cut. The cast is great. It's got Karen Gillian, who we know from playing Nebula in Guardians of the Galaxy. Tim Russell, Katie Sackhoff is in it. I think you know her from Battlestar Galactica. Yeah, and a guy named Rory Cochrane. The synopsis is haunted by the violent demise of their parents 10 years earlier. Adult siblings Kaylee and Tim are now struggling to rebuild their relationship. Kaylee suspects that their antique mirror, known as the Lasser glass, is behind the tragedy. The seemingly harmless reflections contain a malevolent supernatural force that infects the minds of anyone who gazes into it. As Kaylee gets closer to the truth, the siblings become caught in the mirror's evil spell. So you basically get to see this mirror when they were kids and when they are adult, which is cool. So you've got a little bit of scary stuff on both ends, just like Hill House.
Right.
For some reason, Rotten Tomatoes only gave this 75%. I think it deserves better than that. Okay. And there were 158 reviews. I would bump it up to at least an 80 because the camera and editing skills alone deserve that. That's pretty much what I did. Oculus. I would recommend it. It's definitely on our list to cover.
Yeah, and I've got a key from that because I'm pretty sure that mirror is in House of Usher. Follow the House of Usher.
It is. I think it's like Sam Raimi's car. I think it's in all of his films.
Yeah, it might be. It might be. Yeah, I think so. I wish I had done that because I finally gave in and watched the last two episodes that I've been putting off of Obi-Wan. and
Oh
finished
no.
it. And yeah, it's oh no. It makes me trepidatious about even starting Andor, even though people say Andor is great.
Andor is great.
So I mean, I was just not good. And I love some of the cast in it. And I like the partially the world building in it, but it's very formulaic and it's very disjointed. Doesn't make a lot of sense script wise. If anybody's out there listening or watching and you liked Obi-Wan the series, I would love to talk to you about it and find out what it was that compelled you to like it, especially by the end. And the fact that by the end of it, and again, it's one of those where we can't create any suspense because it's a prequel. No one, and Obi-Wan is not going to die. Neither is Darth, neither is Aunt Beru, neither is anybody. So
And
that's
any
it.
encounter with Darth Vader, they always get away.
Yeah. He's not the powerful one, like, that scene in Rogue One, which is so good. That's Vader, the way we want Vader. In this one, he's still bowing to the Emperor, and it's actually these Inquisitors that have much more airtime, screen time, and they're not very good either. So I was very disappointed. It's very corporate. It's very, I don't want to say Disney, I think more corporate. It's that mentality of let's crank out some stuff. Same thing that Marvel's been doing lately. So I was very disappointed and I didn't like it, but I'm glad I finished it finally. That's one of my 4 series I'm watching that I haven't finished yet.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Well, don't let it dissuade you or discourage you from Andor, because
I
Andor is the folks that did Rogue One.
right. And I've heard it's really strong. I've heard it's the best of them. So
And you don't have any of the original characters in it that I recall. It's
right, you
just
just
its
have
own story.
uh,
Yeah.
it's about Andor, right? It's about Cassio or the merchant, free the rogue guy.
Right.
Uh,
It's been a long time since I saw Rogue One, but I know that he's
yeah.
connected to it. And the first episode or two, I didn't think I was going to like it because I was like, what is this? I couldn't figure out what they were doing. And then once I realized where they were going, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm in. This is great.
It's interesting. Maybe it's my negative personality sometimes, but I like prequels that I know are going to have a sad ending or a climactic ending, like Rogue One. We know they're not going to make it. They didn't. They all, we know from A New Hope that they died getting this disc to Princess Leia.
Right.
And so we know the whole series the whole movie, that's what it's building to. It's going to have this climactic end and it's not going to be happy and pretty and good. We can watch Titanic because we know how it's going to end.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to be pretty, but that's okay. I can handle that. But the same thing that Star Trek universe has been doing for a while of trying to do all these prequels and shoehorn them into original canon. And it doesn't
And they're doing
work.
things that totally contradict. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's the worst case scenario. The best case scenario is how do you create suspense and drama? Because, we know these characters survive. So,
Except for Pike.
well, we know what happens to him. And so
Yeah.
we'll know when it happens. We'll go, okay, now we're on that.
And it's the end.
So we'll have one more episode and then he'll be in a wheelchair,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
But that's it. Anyway, I struggled through the end of Obi-Wan.
Well, how ironic that you're talking about old properties versus new properties.
Yeah. Good segue. Look at you. That's a good
Today,
one. Yeah.
we have yet another double feature. This one this one probably could have landed in sci-fi or horror, but it landed in horror on our list. And it had been, well, what are we, 6 seasons in? I think it's about time we got to the big guy and we are doing King Kong.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah. The original King Kong and his descendant, I guess.
Let's go black and white. There we go.
Let's do black and white.
Well, the first one, King Kong, was in 1933. And it was, well, and then we'll get to the other one when we get to it, which was 2005, the Peter Jackson version. We're going to skip that one that came in the middle, even though I'm very familiar with it because I loved it as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
This one from 1933 was an RKO picture, and I had no idea. I was like, I thought this was Universal. I thought this was a Universal property. And I did some research on that. Did you?
A little bit. Yeah.
It turns out that it was RKO and that Universal didn't acquire the rights until 1962 when they wanted to distribute King Kong versus Godzilla. The Japanese version they wanted to distribute in other countries, and that's how they acquired it. But then RKO sold the rights to Dino De Laurentiis to do the 1976 version, I think it was. Yeah. And so Universal sued them, and they went to court, and none of them got it. It ended up going back to Marion Cooper, the guy that did this version.
Yeah.
And his son was still alive, and his son sold the rights to Universal for what I would think is a pretty penny.
I'm sure, because they wanted it bad.
Yeah, and Universal has had it ever since, pretty much. Although they do get in conflict sometimes with others, but I won't go into that. So I was really curious about that because as soon as I saw RKO, I was like, wow, did not expect that. A brief synopsis. I'm just going to read this really quick. Carl Denham needs to finish his movie and has the perfect location, Skull Island, although they never really use that name, do they?
In the original, no.
I didn't think so.
In the remake, yes, a lot.
Right, because they've already had a spinoff for that. But he still needs to find a leading lady. The soon-to-be unfortunate soul is Ann Darrow. No one knows what they will encounter on this island and why it is so mysterious, but once they reach it, they soon find out. Not only living on this island is a giant gorilla, but it's also a bunch of prehistoric and crazy creatures. And Ann is basically sacrificed to it by the natives of the island, which I found totally terrifying. I had forgotten how great that was. And her new love, Jack Driscoll, who is Jack in this? First mate on the ship. Yeah.
Jack, yes.
Because in the second movie, it's the writer. Yeah. And he must travel through the jungle looking for Kong and Ann while avoiding all sorts of creatures. And of course, they end up bringing Kong back to the United States, and the rest is history. I think most people know how this movie ends.
I would hope so. There's going to be spoilers, folks.
Well, and there's going to be confusion because I've already confused characters because we watched both movies, and I'm like, which one is this one?
Isn't this the 91st anniversary in it?
It's got to be close. I mean, this movie is nearly 100 years old.
Yep. Almost 100 years old and still so impactful. Wow.
I love this movie. And, we try to cover movies in the 20s as well. There are just not as many of them, so we don't do it as often. But This is a great 1930s movie to cover.
Oh, I mean, it's a great any year movie to cover.
What is your memory of this movie or your experience with this movie?
I first saw this movie on television. Of course, probably the Saturday afternoon, shock theater. I'm sure the first few times I saw it, I saw the edited version and just blown away with it. Again, to me, I mean, I was going, oh my gosh, this is Ray Harryhausen at his best. And I trumpeted that for a couple of weeks until I found out this isn't Ray Harryhausen.
No.
This is why Ray Harryhausen does what this is Ray Harryhausen's a huge key from this. Because this is the movie that influenced him. He actually got to work with Willis O'Brien on this. But I still remember, I mean, I've probably watched this movie, 24 times and love it every single time and still get choked up at the end every time. It's just so, the fact that you can make this little, 1.5-foot puppet that's stop animated have this amount of emotional catharsis in a story says a lot about the filmmakers, about the way it's done, the structure, the editing, everything.
Well, it's just like I said when we covered Beast of 20,000 Fathoms a few seasons back. This animated character has a character. I mean, he has expression, and you feel those expressions through the animation. I would even go as far as to say Godzilla does it sometimes too, but that's not animation. That's a suit. And that's the actor in the suit, more of an Andy Serkis key, I guess, than this would be more of a Ray Harryhausen key.
Maybe I never get any empathy whatsoever with Godzilla, mostly because they kept flipping him up so much, and I didn't know, is he a bad guy? Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? Is he a good guy? I don't
Now,
know.
he's
I don't understand.
predominantly a good guy, but he started as a bad guy. And
Yeah,
Kong is not either. He's just an animal.
right. He's
Yeah,
just a poor animal. That's just
right.
the fact that he happens to be 30 feet tall or whatever. So yeah, there's that. Yeah, we don't worry about all those probably dozens and dozens and dozens of people he killed by the time he's being shot on the tower.
Right. Right.
So, what about you, first time?
Definitely television. I would say probably a late Friday night shock theater type thing.
Hmm.
I definitely rented it in the 80s. And this is probably just the third time I've seen it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And it had been so long that I had forgotten parts of it. I had forgotten a lot of all the activity that takes place on the island
Yeah.
with all the other different creatures because I kept seeing all these modern King Kong Skull Island commercials on television. And I was like, when did they have dinosaurs and stuff? And obviously they did, even in the
They
original.
did.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It
Yeah.
was directed by Marion Cooper, who
Hmm.
was uncredited. The He was also the writer and producer of Mighty Joe Young, which I have never seen, but my mother loves that movie.
Oh, you should watch it. It's good. It's a
Okay.
good sequel. It's a good
Yeah.
sequel. Hmm.
And he was doing Most Dangerous Game at the same time, so they utilized the same jungle sets. And I want to say most of the cast, like particularly Fay Ray, would work on one in the daytime and one at night
And over
or weekends.
Fay Ray did 4 films between the last shot she shot of this and when the movie was released. Because it took them over a year and 2 months to do all the special effects.
All the animation. Yeah.
So yeah, she did Most Dangerous Game and 3 other movies. A lot of the cast did multiple movies before they even saw this movie released. So yeah.
As it was actually co-directed because Ernest B.
Yes.
Schoedsack, is that how you say that?
Shoed Sack. Yeah. Ed
Schoedsack
Sack. Yeah.
was also a director. Why do I have that they were both uncredited? That doesn't make sense.
Don't think they were uncredited. They might have been not
Maybe at
credited.
first.
I know that Marion also worked on the screenplay with James
Mhm.
Ashmore, but Creelman, he left the project, and actually Ruth Rose is in documentaries is credited as writing most of this movie,
Okay.
screenplay wise.
But Cooper and
Uh,
Schoedsack had the Most Dangerous Game connection with the
yes.
cast and the sets.
And one of the reasons I think that the movie works so well is because they were documentary filmmakers before they did this movie. They were each doing documentaries, and so they added a lot of realism for the time, and their editing is so strong in this with the special effects going back to the effects, back to the live action, because they were so used to narrated documentaries of animals and things.
we
So
covered
that helped.
something recently that was made by a documentary filmmaker, and I can't remember what it was.
I can't either right now,
Okay.
but
Maybe if I do, I'll put it in the notes.
yeah.
As far as background, I've got that Cooper came up with the idea because he had a bizarre dream about a giant ape that was destroying New York.
Yep.
And when he got up, he wrote it all down, and this is the basis for what got developed and produced. And as you said, it was James Ashmore Creelman and Ruth Rose who were credited for the screenplay.
Mm-hmm. I've got in trivia, David O. Selznick really supported this film, so much so that he would take budgets from other films and pour them into the Kong budget to have more money for them to do what they need to do for the special effects.
That's awesome.
Yep. Cooper was under contract at RKO, I have too. That's why he was another reason why he directed it.
Well, that makes sense because I would say most of these people were contract players back then in that time.
The original title was The Beast. That was the name of it. And did you read who came up with the actual title of King Kong?
I did, but I can't remember.
That
'Cause
was David O. Selznick,
it
right
was
before he
Selznick,
left the
yeah, because
studio.
they were just calling him Kong,
Yep.
right? And
And
that's
this was
when,
right before he left the studio. Because he left before this movie was released.
yeah, he went to MGM, didn't he?
Yeah, because he was getting ready for
Gone
Gone
with
with
the
the Wind.
Wind and Wizard of Oz and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I've got that it grossed 90,000 its opening weekend, which was the
Mm-hmm.
biggest opening ever at the time. So
Mm-hmm.
it was the first technically 1930s blockbuster, I guess you would say.
Yeah,
But
it
it
was
was,
considered the first blockbuster in history. Yeah.
yeah, and it was
Mm-hmm.
budgeted though, an estimated budget of $670,000. Of course, it
Mm-hmm.
probably made more than that, and it was credited for saving RKO from bankruptcy.
Yeah, one of my keys is this was the Freddy Krueger. What did Nightmare do for
The house that Freddie built for
House that Freddy built? Yeah.
what is that? New Line Cinema.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, this was a similar thing to that.
I was
I've
blown
got
away when I sat down to watch this and it had an overture. I mean, that just never
okay.
happens.
So I was going to ask you that. So the version you watched had an overture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was added in the re-release. That was not in the original. The original did not have an overture. It
Okay.
did have 5 missing scenes that were cut because when this movie was released in 33, it was original and everything else. In 1934, the Hays Code was imposed. And they felt that Kong was too violent. So when it was re-released in 38, it was heavily edited. 5 different scenes were excised and shots and stuff like that. And it wasn't until the late 60s that the full master was restored and they added a Max Steiner overture to it.
So I
that
saw
was
the restored version with an overture.
I'm pretty sure you did. Did you see, like, was Kong chomping on people? Like, did they show the full head and he was
Occasionally.
biting on people? Yeah. Then that was restored because all of those scenes were cut from the original. And it's just one of those strange quirks or mysteries or, serendipitous things of life that they could restore it because RKO never kept originals. They never kept original negatives. So
Great.
if it was on the cutting room floor, they got rid of it. And it wasn't until they found a 16 millimeter version in Philadelphia. And then they restored the 16 and upgraded it to 35 for the release in the 60s.
But still no one can find the lost spider scene that's so infamous.
That they saw pictures of, but nobody knows if they ever really shot anything. They may have the pictures and images that we've seen from it may have been either test footage that O'Brien was doing, or it might have been like almost like screenshot testing, but nobody can actually prove that they actually shot it. However, doing research, this movie had a shooting schedule of 55 weeks. That's huge. That is so long.
But does that include the animation and everything?
No.
No.
That's principal photography. So, and that's long. I'm not sure if they were shooting full days or how. I haven't seen any shooting schedule.
Did The Most Dangerous Game have the same?
I didn't research that, so I can't answer.
Well, and that is on our list. We may end up doing that one day because there's been more than one adaptation of those as well.
But yeah, 55 weeks to shoot. Fay Wray did 4 movies in between the production and the actual release of the movie. I've got one trivia that said the day she wrapped filming, so her final day, she then had to go for 2 days into the recording studio and just do screams.
Screams.
And she later on called that, I think in an autobiography or whatever, her aria of agonies.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
I thought that was a cute little title.
She's got an unofficial crediting of being the first scream queen in movies.
Yeah, of course.
Because she did do like 4 horror movies, including this. She did Dr. X, Mystery of the Wax Museum, which I watched recently. That's a predecessor to House of Wax that was remade. and Most Dangerous Game is lumped in there as well. So
Hmm.
that's interesting. What about scenes? We haven't talked about any scenes.
There's so many that are good once they get to the island. I mean, when you say King Kong to me, the scenes that always come, of course, are the ending, because that's just such an iconic image and story
Oh, you mean when
point.
he's on the Empire State
Yeah,
Building?
when he's on the Empire State, of
Okay.
course. The log scene always terrified me
Mm-hmm.
as a kid, and always, because these guys were just trying to hang on, and Kong was like, "No, I'm shaking you off, and I'm
Yeah.
throwing you," and it's just like an animal would do. It's like, damn it. The Tyrannosaurus fight, I like.
Yeah.
Ironically, all these are effects shots, you notice, because one of my notes says that this was also the first movie in film history where the special effects were essentially the star of the story. Without the special effects, you would not have been able to tell this story.
No.
So I disputed that in my head a little bit, because I was thinking, well, first men on the moon, Trip to the Moon, the one that was done with the little animation and
the bullet going,
shoot
or
the
the
moon
rocket
in the
ship going in the
eye.
eye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was special effects. But then again, this is much more of a lengthier story and tells a better, it's better in
Yeah, I
general.
think
So
First Men in
maybe
the, or what is that called?
Trip to the Moon, I
Trip
think.
to the Moon. I think
Yeah.
that's a short, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. It was. But yeah, so I've got that as one of the first of the blockbuster first movie that made special effects the star of the film. First movie with a fully symphonic score. There was a 46-piece orchestra that did the music for this.
That
First
was
screen
definitely a
queen.
big step. First screen
First
queen.
screen
Yeah.
queen, which is what you said.
Mhm.
And there had been stop animation prior to this, but this revolutionized it because Willis O'Brien created armatures that were metal, so that they could hold the look a lot better, and it was a lot faster to shoot it because the posing would stay tight. However, I did read in the trivia that every night after shooting, his assistants had to take all of the fur and muscle off of the armatures and tighten all the screws on all the joints so that they would be tight again for the next day shooting. It's going, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I also
So,
read that you can see the fur move because of the way they would handle it. It
yeah,
looks like the fur is blowing in wind,
yeah.
but what it is it's where they've handled it and set it back down, and the actual outside has changed just a little bit.
Yeah.
If it's
Yeah,
clay or whatever it is.
they gripped it to move the
Mhm.
arm up, and then took a picture, and then gripped it to move the arm up again. And they're not gripping in the same place, so the
Yeah.
fur is moving.
And I read
Yeah.
that like days before I watched it, but when I watched it, I immediately saw it. I was like, oh, that's what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, also the design, they went through design after design of design for Kong's face, because a gorilla's face wasn't expressive enough, they felt, especially Cooper. And he wanted more of a human looking face, but Willis O'Brien was opposed to that because he said it wouldn't develop that way. So they ended up with a hybrid, which on the miniature, I think works, but the close-ups don't. The
No,
full head that they did doesn't work.
the teeth are too perfect too.
And Willis O'Brien hated that. He said if he could do he said several times in interviews after this, if he could do anything, he would have cut all of the head close-ups.
Yeah.
He hated the full size model.
It's the same way in the De Laurentiis version.
Oh yeah.
I mean, when you see him at a distance, he's great, but when you see him up close, it's not good. Yeah.
Well, what are you saying about Rick Baker? Poor Rick Baker tried his best, Tim. I mean, come on.
Well, it just looks like a big robotic head is what it looks like.
Oh, you're talking about when they do the
Yes.
mechanical one, not Rick Baker in close up in makeup.
No. Yes.
Oh,
exactly.
okay. Yes,
Yeah.
you're right. You're correct. Yeah.
Yeah, or the
it's hard
hand.
to
giant
do that
hand on a
amount.
crane.
Yeah, the great.
Yeah.
Yeah. That hand.
Mm-hmm. That hand. As far as my scenes, I would definitely put the log scene in there for sure.
Mhm.
The T-Rex battle's great. The pterodactyl battle's great. But I do have a scene that's not really special effects, except Kong is in them. But anytime Fay Ray looks at Kong differently than being terrified, when you see there's a connection building there, I like those shots. I guess they're more shots than scenes.
Looking
So,
back at it again, I like the two sequence scenes where the one where she's on the deck and you can tell she's attracted to the first mate, and
she's standing on that rope, like that big fat coil of rope.
yeah, yeah. And Denham comes up and says, "Go get changed. I want to shoot some test footage, blah, blah, blah." And she comes back with the dress on and everything, and he's coaching her. That was a really good scene too. And I think the other guy, Driscoll's his name.
Driscoll.
He was watching, and
Mhm.
looking down at them film it and everything. And yeah, they definitely fall into the cliche of hate each other at first and then fall in love, because he is just so negative to her. You don't belong here. Women don't belong on the ship.
Know.
You shouldn't be going on this.
Yeah. Women don't belong on this ship. It's very misogynistic. Or
Right.
very
And then
gay,
suddenly it's, I'm going to go save Anne. No one, you guys stay here.
Right. And then I was mentioning scenes, but the natives, I do not remember them being that scary.
Really? Okay.
I don't. I guess I'm remembering the one that's in the De Laurentiis film where it's like a tribe and a lot of music, to build up the drama, dum, 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 with the drums and stuff.
Yep.
In this one, they go on and they're like hiding and come out and ambush them.
Oh yeah.
And that I did not remember that at all. And the little girl was like savage and like biting. And she looked like a white girl in blackface. I'm not sure if that was the case, but some of them were definitely more aggressive than others. They just start coming out of the shadows, and sure, they scare them away with guns, but the minute they go back to the ship, that woman, that witch doctor woman or whatever she is, she wants that blonde girl, and she sends them out on their canoes to that boat to get her.
That's right. Go get her, and make sure you drop your skull necklace, so we'll have
so they'll know she didn't fall overboard.
Right.
That's funny.
Yeah, but that is a good one. I agree. I think the whole I thinking about that's a good sequence. Anne's terror at what's happening to her was really good.
Mm-hmm.
The way they tied her up and then they just abandon her and go and close those big doors, and she's left there all by herself, like screaming. Yeah.
And I mean, she doesn't know that she's not a sacrifice or going to be eaten or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Volcano's going to explode. I mean, she has no clue. There's no communication. Yeah.
And then we have the main ending, of course. He's shooting the movie, but then he decides, we have to bring Kong back because that's the money right there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, of course, he ends up in New York City at the big show where he is basically handcuffed in a very Jesus Christ pose. And of course he escapes and wreaks havoc on the city briefly before he ends up getting killed.
Mm-hmm.
Any other scenes before we move on?
I mean, there's scene after scene in this, just from the special effects. I mean, the elevated train scene, the grab the girl out of the window, and it's not Ann Darrow, and Kong just kind of goes.
I love that when he is like just picking people up and just throwing them.
Yeah, yeah. Or like the one that they, obviously one of the scenes they cut, but in the restored version, when he's rampaging through the tribe in the beginning, the village, and that one guy, he pulls him out of the room and throws him down and stomps on him, and then looks at him again and stomps him again. Go, yeah.
Oh, and in the mud. Yeah, it's like in mud.
Yeah.
I just remembered what I was going to say is one of my memories of this movie is that my mother loved this movie. And that's why we went and saw the 76 remake so many times in a theater, because she just loved this movie. And I was trying to think, how old would she have been when this movie came out? And she would have been 6. So she
Okay.
obviously, I mean, I guess they could have taken a 6-year-old to see it, or maybe she grew up seeing either re-releases or if
Could
they
have been, but
re-released it at theaters,
there was
there were
no
no
ratings
TVs.
board. There was no ratings board at the time. The Hayes Commission didn't even come out for another year.
I would think this
And
movie
that
would
was
terrify a
basically,
6-year-old, though.
I would think so too. If flying monkeys scared people, this would definitely scare people, I think.
Just monkeys
You
with
know,
wings, smaller, but
right.
um,
Also, I think it says a lot about the filmmaking and the storytelling and the way it's plotted. Kong, I timed it. Kong does not appear until 44 minutes and 28 seconds into the movie.
and then it's like 45 minutes of just action.
Oh, yeah. Of just nonstop, you know.
Yeah, that's where the animation starts pretty much
Yep.
in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I timed it too because I was curious.
So,
Well,
yeah,
you want to move on to cast?
sure.
All right. Oh, I've got those gas bombs are going to come in handy. They sure show those at the beginning.
That and all the jargon at the beginning. I mean, you know, all of Robert Armstrong, who plays Carl Denham, his dialogue and everything is like, you know, we're going to do this, Charlie, and we can do it. And everything is that really fast clip 30s dialogue. I was like, okay, I got a map. See, I got this map.
Edward G. Robinson.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, as far as cast, I mentioned that Marion Cooper was filming simultaneously The Most Dangerous Game. The 2 stars from that were Fay Wray and Robert Armstrong. Armstrong, of course, played Carl Denham. I've got that she had 126 credits, and this was one of 11 films she released in 1933. That's a contract player.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
11 films. And you said this one took what, 50 weeks, 55 weeks?
Yep.
So she was doing probably another movie always while she was filming this
Yeah, probably.
that year.
Yeah.
Or the year prior, whenever it was they filmed it. In 1926, the Western Association of Motion Picture Advertisers selected 13 young starlets as most likely to succeed in pictures. She was one of the ones chosen, along with Janet Gaynor and Mary Astor.
Okay.
So that was her big break into the movies.
I could see that.
James Cameron offered her the role of Rose in Titanic. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, she turned it down, and that's why they ended up with Gloria Stewart.
Well, good for her.
I mean, she was still alive when we covered the second feature, the remake in 2005, while they were filming that, because they talked to her. I mean, she lived to be pretty old.
Yeah, she lived in her 90s, I think, because people had talked about, you know, and always about how gracious she was and how awesome she was. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure Jackson reached out to her, and I want to say Naomi either did or tried, and it was too late. I can't remember. Well, here it is right here. She spent time with and became friends with Peter Jackson, a major fan, while he was in the process of developing King Kong, a remake of King Kong. Before she passed on, she also met and became friendly with Naomi Watts, whom she approved to play the part that she had originated, Ann Darrow. So that's sweet.
Man, wouldn't that be so amazing to have that kind of lineage and that kind of endorsement?
It's awesome. And it makes me mad at Dino De Laurentiis because I have a feeling he didn't do any of that shit. You know, and Jessica Lange could have, I mean, Jessica Lange was wonderful in that movie, and it would have been great to see her meet Fay Wray. And maybe she did. I don't know. I doubt it.
We don't know.
No. Fay Wray was not the first choice, though. Jean Harlow and Ginger Rogers were also famous blondes at the time. Both were approached, but Fay was a brunette, and she took the part and insisted that she wear a blonde wig. I don't know. I guess she knew they wanted a blonde. And I've got that the whole film was shot over a period of 8 months. So that would be about that many weeks, I would think.
I have 55 weeks total. So that's over a year. But that I did do research while you were doing that. And that does include all the special effects.
Okay.
So principal photography was probably 4 weeks of that. And the other 51 was special effects and reshoots.
Right. And if it says she shot for 8 months, all the the human stuff was probably shot in 8 months. And then
Yeah.
the rest of the 55 weeks would have been post-production. And that's all I have on Miss Ray. Robert Armstrong played Carl Denham. He reprised the role, or at least came back for Son of Kong, the sequel.
Yeah.
And he was also in Mighty Joe Young. So basically, he was in everything that connected to the original King Kong. So he was the string that, was part of all of them. He was from the Warner Brothers Stock Company. As I mentioned, he was a contract player. And it also consisted of players at the time: James Cagney, Pat O'Brien, Frank McHugh, Alan Hale, Skipper from Gilligan's Island, and Humphrey Bogart.
Okay. I can see that.
And that's all I have on Robert. Bruce Cabot, however, played Jack Driscoll. He was the first mate that did not like Ann Darrow at first, then fell in love with her. He was what they call either the John Wayne Stock Company or the John Ford Stock Company, because him and John Wayne were buddies and made a lot of pictures together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. He was in Big Jake and McClintock, just to name two. What happened was he lost the movie Stagecoach to John Wayne. Stagecoach made John Wayne famous, as you know. It came out in 1939. So he went on to become drinking buddies with him. John Wayne was a big tequila drinker. I don't know if Bruce Cabot was or not. I know a lot about John Wayne. Used to read a lot of biographies on him. Anyway, so he was not only a contract player, he was a John Wayne contract player. And to keep in line with most of the cast from The Most Dangerous Game being in this, the role was intended for Joel McCrea. But Fay Wray said that McCrea's agents demanded more money, so the role was given to Bruce. So that's how they did not get that third actor from The Most Dangerous Game. Captain Englehorn was played by Frank Riker. He was also in Son of Kong. He was in Dr. Cyclops and Captain America from 1944. I can't imagine what that movie is.
Sure, it was excellent.
Frank has 231 credits, including Universal horror movies like The Mummy's Tomb and The Mummy's Ghost.
Okay.
Carl Weston played Sam Hardy. The native chief was Noble Johnson. He was an African-American who was childhood friends with Lon Chaney.
Oh, okay.
I thought that was cool. He has many credits, including The Most Dangerous Game, The Mummy, and Moby Dick, where he played Queequeg to Gregory Peck's Ahab, I believe.
Okay.
And then lastly, I've just got that the Witch King, which is the scary one to me, was played by Steve Clemente. So I guess that wasn't a woman. I thought it was.
The villager?
The Witch King is how they bill it.
Well, I thought there were two. There was the witch, or the
long gray
doctor,
scraggly hair.
And then there was the king, the one that had the big headdress on, and he's the one that actually signaled.
So that must have been
fires.
Noble Johnson would have been the king, the native chief, but a man played the Witch King as well. So that was not a woman, apparently.
Huh.
Yeah,
okay.
And his name was Steve Clemente. However, he was billed as Steve Clemento. I wonder if that was just a typo.
Probably.
And then Second Mate Briggs was played by James Flavin. That's all I have on cast. And all the awards, since this movie is so old, are just DVD posthumous release type stuff. However, it is on the 1001 movies you must see before you die list, which
it should be in the top 10 of that list. Yes. Should be. Yes,
for sure.
I have a few watch notes that I have, because the movie, of course, is not, perfect, obviously, but like I've got, and this will be true for our second part of this double feature too, but how many men can fit on this boat? It looks like there's 150 guys. I mean, especially when they start doing stuff like, let's go back to the village and fight Ann, or try to find Ann and all this. And okay, you 30 guys stay here. You 15 come with me. I'm going, golly, how big is this boat? Anyway.
And they unlock the gun rack and start passing out rifles.
Yeah. The scene where it's a brontosaurus that actually attacks them, which is weird because I've got in my notes, wow, that is one mean vegisaurus. Because remember in Jurassic, we established brontosauruses are vegetarians. They're not going to eat people on the raft or anything else. But they come, they're chasing after Anne. This is before the log, of course. The first thing they come up to is a swamp. And they say, okay, you guys get some logs. Let's build a raft. I'm going, how long would it take to build this huge freaking raft?
Have they not seen Gilligan's Island? It takes a little while.
For like 16 people, and then it's destroyed within like 2 minutes. Once
I
they
love
set
when it
sail.
gets capsized. That's great.
Yeah. And then, following that's the great scene where the one guy climbs the tree. They all run away, and the one guy climbs the tree, and the brontosaurus comes up and bites him out of it and everything.
He's like trying to get to each side. Yeah, it's great. That reminded me of another scene that I love that I forgot, and it's the scene where Jack is underneath Kong after they've all been shaken off the log.
Oh yeah, and Kong's reaching down,
and he's like stabbing him in the finger.
Yeah,
then Kong's like, "What is stabbing me?"
I've got something I never saw, and like I said, I've seen this movie probably 24 times, but I've never noticed it before. When Kong fights the pterodactyl. Oh, trivia on that: the pterodactyl fight alone was 7 weeks of Willis O'Brien's work. 7 weeks to do just that one, like 2-minute scene. Anyway, they climb down on the rope, and this is before Kong starts pulling it up and everything.
Right.
But as they're climbing down, in the background behind them in the map painting, you can see the wall on the edge of near the beach, and you can see the ship just past the cove line in the beach. And I never noticed that before. And wow, that's attention to detail. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that is cool. I'm looking in the picture right now. I don't see it. But anyway. That's crazy. I wanted to talk about that spider scene because you said there's much speculation as to whether or not it was ever filmed.
Right.
I've got a note that says, I guess it was Cooper personally removed a scene in which 4 sailors, after Kong shook them off a log bridge, fall into the ravine and are eaten alive by giant spiders. Because when he previewed it in 33 to audience members, they either fled the theater in terror or talked about the ghastly scene during the entire movie. He said it stopped the picture cold. So the next day they took it out.
Yeah, my research was nobody's ever seen that footage. No one's ever seen any of the excise scenes. They've got stills of it. And so much so that Peter Jackson, when they were doing theirs as fun, put that scene together.
Yeah, they made their own little version of it as an homage.
Yeah. So, okay, cool. It's so contradicting research, but it's possible, that if it's got that much detail, I would think he probably did shoot it, edit it in, and then go, oh, nope, can't do that.
Well, I mean, some of the shots that they had looked like the same shot in the remake that Jackson made. Like some of the still shots.
Yeah. I don't know. It makes me wish that he had edited Jackson's version. Anyway, go ahead. We'll get there.
You just don't like giant spiders.
Well, and those were crab spider things in the Jackson one. Those were weird.
They were weird, but it's not just spiders either. The spiders come later. It's other insects.
It wasn't that.
First.
It was freaking creepy crawly roaches.
Giant insects alone. I mean, there's a million keys there now that I think about it.
I've got trivia wise. Oh, the guy when they're going to see Kong, because they're there, Kong's unconscious on the island, and Denham has the line about he's going to be the 8th wonder of the world. Then suddenly we cut to 8th wonder of the world, Jack Denham's, and we open up and everybody's, massing into the theater. And one guy says, well, I hope this is good. These tickets cost $20. So in today's economy, that would be $486.
That's a lot of money because, that was right after the Depression.
Yeah, it's going on at the time. Depression is still hit. And it's you're going to spend that much just to go see a giant monkey? I had one guy I watched and did a review of it and said, okay, so 1933, King Kong got this huge, gorgeous, the Astor Theater, and everybody's there, and we all pile in. And Denham comes out, does his little curtain speech, open the curtain, there she is. What's the show? What did you pay to go see? You just gonna
Right.
stand there and watch the monkey? It's not the zoo. What are you doing?
Yeah. And both De Laurentiis, I believe, and definitely Peter Jackson basically mocked the tribal ritual.
Yeah, they
at
did
the
a full
island. Yeah.
show
With
building
like
up to it.
dancers in native wear
Yeah.
and stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and
I've
then my
got,
last watch note is, okay, if Kong can climb all these buildings so easy, couldn't he just have climbed over that frickin' wall? I mean, he just walked right up to it and knocked the door down. Why couldn't he have just climbed over it?
Yeah, I thought that too. I mean, he busts through it in the Peter Jackson one too. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
that wall doesn't really work. And that's I think the thing that works though, and then I think they may have even implied this in the De Laurentiis version, is that by offering King Kong sacrifices, he doesn't break the wall. He lets them live on the other side of it because they give him stuff.
Sure.
I don't know. In my trivia, I also have that what you said about it being the first fully symphonic musical score. And that's why I guess they added an overture in the re-release, because most of the time overtures are only in musicals like West Side Story or Sound of Music or something.
Well, no, larger movie like Wizard of Oz has an overture. And
That's
so,
a
I mean,
musical.
I'm sorry, Gone with the Wind has an overture and an entr'acte.
Actually, you're right. Gone with the Wind does have an overture and an intermission as well.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot about that. Okay.
So yeah, it just depends on the length, I think, or the, whether or not it sets the mood for the piece, I guess. I don't know.
And then I had one more trivia note. When this film premiered on Easter Sunday in London, 12,000 people were turned away.
Wow.
That's crazy, because I guess the hype reached England before the movie did. And so people were ready to go when it got there. And I guess it played for a year. Who knows?
Yeah, it was a huge blockbuster at the time.
Yeah. So, I mean, we always talk about Jaws being the first modern blockbuster. Well, this has to be really the first historical blockbuster.
Correct. Yep.
So, Jaws and King Kong, the big baddies.
That's it. Boy, part of the show is us dealing with these keys and looking up keys and everything else. But this film was so influential in so many ways. I mean, even if we wanted to say it, look at RKO and the studio and the producers. And this showed them the value of cinema and the value of going over budget and the value of, if you can create a blockbuster and it makes this amount of recoup, yeah, do it. Go ahead. And this showed that in 1933.
So that I don't know how I would type that in as a key, but yeah, you're right. It basically is the original blockbuster formula.
Yeah, and showed corporate greed. You spend more on your movie and it'll get better or whatever. No, just
I'll see if I can find something.
I've got the first key that I have is from an interview that Cooper did after the movie, and he said he was also very influenced by Douglas D. Burden, Burden. He is credited as being the first man to ever see a Komodo dragon and document it. So part of his documentarianism, I guess, for Cooper was he was very influenced by this guy, so much so that he went to the New York Zoo where they had an exhibit of Komodo dragons. And that was an inspiration too for the movie.
What was his name again?
His name was Douglas D. Burden, Burden.
The first thing I thought of, and you're going to laugh when I say this because it was Rocky Horror. Whatever happened to Fay Ray?
Whatever happened to Fay Ray?
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah. And it's funny, but we have a lot of Rocky Horror clues because we're watching all those movies from the science fiction song. But
Hmm.
this one is not from the science fiction song. It's from Frankenfurter's last song when he asked whatever
Hmm.
happened to Fay Ray.
I've got The Lost World, 1925. Willis
Mm.
O'Brien credited that as a huge influence on him and being able to do stop animation, and stop animation compared to, oh, let's just put a fin on a lizard and let it crawl around on a little miniature set.
Was
Yeah,
that in the 20s? What year did you say?
1925
Okay,
was
so it
Lost
was a
World.
silent movie. Yeah.
Hmm.
I have obviously all of the sequels and spin-offs. Son of Kong, Mighty Joe Young, King Kong 1976, and then the one that we'll be getting to shortly, 2005.
And all the ones
Obviously.
that have come from that, Skull Island and Kong versus Godzilla and all the other ones that have come.
Right. Well, and there was a Kong versus Godzilla in the 60s as
Yeah,
well. Yeah,
yeah.
from that was Toho.
Toho.
Toho Studios. I
I
just put
have.
go ahead.
Mhm. I've got, again, to the point of movies where special effects became the star or focus of the film. Two of Cameron's, Terminator 2 and The Abyss. Both of those require special effects to actually tell the story and to be, central to the theme. So,
That makes sense.
yeah.
I put Food of the Gods because
Oh,
of the giant creatures that are on the island.
uh-huh.
But I mean, you said The Lost World, which was the science fiction silent film,
Hmm.
but or fantasy, whatever you want to call it. But I mean, there are so many others that we could name that I don't know that we should. But things like The Land That Time Forgot or
Oh, yeah.
Mysterious Island,
Yep.
those time. I'll just put those in there. I guess.
Those are definitely ties to
Yeah.
King Kong. I mean, they could have essentially landed on Skull Island in both of those. You
Right.
know, there's a great documentary I watched called Long Live the King. And I recommend you go watch it and find it on YouTube. It's really good because one of the big guys who speaks, it's it's composed of a bunch of references and interviews with people who are actually special effects artists. They're either matte painters or animators, or Dennis Muren, who, was so influential in stop animation until CGI came out. And even Greg Nicotero is interviewed in it. It's called Long Live the King. It's really good. But that just led me to this list of like Dennis Muren, Douglas Trumbull, Rick Baker. All of them have personally said King Kong was a huge influence on their lives and becoming filmmakers, because and especially after they found out that you could make a puppet have that much realism and be that effective in storytelling. So I think that's a huge key and legacy of this film.
Makes sense. I mean, any makeup
Uh,
artist, I would think,
yeah.
or special effects person. Yeah.
Special effects artist. You
Hmm.
had said that there were, X number of thousands of people in line to see it in England. One thing I read online posited that a direct influence of King Kong was the Loch Ness Monster, because the very first sightings started 6 months after the film was released in
It was those
England.
12,000 people that couldn't get in.
Yeah, they
They
couldn't get
made it
in.
up.
They said, okay, then we got our own monster over here. Uh,
That's funny. I have one. I lifted this from IMDb, but I should have come up with it myself now that I think about it. But
mhm.
I mentioned earlier the scene where he is in New York and he's in that like crucifixion pose on the
Yeah.
big podium. It's iconic with the Frankenstein monster. In
Hmm.
Bride of Frankenstein, there is a scene where the monster is tied in, or Boris Karloff, that is tied in a similar device and being taken to the village.
Hmm.
And it's very Christ-like pose. It's weird how
Well,
movie directors do that. We talked about it in Omega Man 2, how they
mhm.
put Charlton Heston in that Christ pose at the end. It's like, what are they trying to say?
Well, they're trying to use that iconography, but just because it's so emotionally impactful for
I
us.
guess, but it seems like it might offend some people, though. I don't know.
Well, no, I don't think so, because I think a lot of people see it as a compliment or homage to, rather than usurping power from. You know what I
Right?
mean? Oh, he's Christ-like, meaning, oh,
He's
that's
a good
Christ.
guy.
No, he's a good guy. He's
Yeah,
suffering. Um, and I've got in mind Frankenstein in general. The
Mhm.
whole subtext of we care more about this monster by the
Than
end of the movie
everybody
than we do
else.
everybody else.
Yeah, bite everybody's
And
head off. We don't care.
yeah, we don't care. Throw those people out of that tram car. We don't care about that. Just find Faye and run away together. Come
So
on.
there's more than
Um,
one tie to Frankenstein, not just the
yeah,
imagery, but also just the character in general. Yeah.
and that subplot of a mad scientist and or hero or whomever who thinks he can control things beyond his control.
Right.
You know, uh, Denham really thought that he could do this and make money off of it and everything else, which is crazy. I've got, of course, Ray Harryhausen,
That was my
hugely
next
influenced by
one.
this
That's
movie.
hilarious. And I was thinking in particular, Beast from, was it 20
20,000 Fathoms.
Fathoms
Yep.
and 20 Million Miles to Earth? Is that the other one?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Those
Both of
two
those.
in general, because I
Huge.
mentioned, especially in the latter, how much character that creature had in his face. And it's the same with Kong. Kong has, you sympathize with him. He's got great character.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've got one you probably wouldn't have, Frozen, because there's an homage to it with the snow monster that Elsa creates. And even so much so that it's at the cliff and they're trying to climb down and he's pulling up the rope, trying to get to them.
I forgot. It's been so long since I saw that. I haven't seen it since I saw it in the theater. But yeah, I do remember that. And their faces are round with big eye sockets.
Yep. Yeah. It looks very similar to that.
All I have.
Well, my last key for this version is one of my favorite movies that is so underrated by everyone, The Stuntman with Peter O'Toole.
Okay.
And it's all about movie making and how to make money. And he convinces the hero in it that he can be an actor and a stuntman because King Kong was 1'6". And he says, but look what he did and how he changed the face of the planet with
That's
everything,
great.
And even down, there's this great line near the very end when he's going, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. And the director's flying in a helicopter near him and he goes, how tall was King Kong? And he goes, you're right, 1'6", you son of a bitch. And he goes and does the big stunt, so
Funny.
it's a great movie. But yeah. So influential. This movie, I loved watching it again, and I'm really glad we picked it. It was good.
Yeah, I am too. And we had talked about it, being an addition to our Universal monsters, and it really wasn't until later.
Right. But now it's considered a Universal. I mean, when you go to the theme park, that's another thing too. Oh, miss that. The tram ride at Universal was huge with King Kong for a while until it caught fire and burned down. But there's a lot of Kong iconography on the New York City street and Universal theme park. So
yeah, I'm going to put that. I had forgotten about that. So yeah, I would venture to say that we both enjoyed this movie.
Yes,
we talk about influential movies a lot, and particular movies that we think are really, really influential. And this is definitely in that category. We should probably make a list of what we think are the top 10 influential films, because I think
that would be a good episode, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are the top 10 most influential films in history?
Yeah.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
But we have to move on. So we're going to talk about our second feature today, which is the Peter Jackson version of King Kong. Came out in 2005.
Yep. The rest of this episode will be 4.5 hours long as we cover the Peter Jackson.
No, we're going to go fast. Yeah.
I mean, when was the first time you saw this one? Let's go back there.
The first time I saw it was just now, the other day. I had never seen this.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. I had seen it once before. I'd seen it, not when it came out, but I think when it was re-released on Blu-ray.
Okay.
I caught it then. Yeah.
What is your opinion of it? I mean, I just saw it. This was your second time, right?
Right. And once I did some research on, backtrack. I felt the same way watching it this time I did the first time, which was it has some really great stuff to it. It is obviously from somebody who loved the original
Right.
because there's a lot of homage and there's a lot of the same feeling as the original. But Jesus, it is way too freaking long.
It is long.
It's it's not that there were elements that were too long. Almost every single scene in this is too long. Every action sequence is too long. Every fight battle is too long. And he could have easily, I think, trimmed 45 minutes off of this movie. Easy.
Yeah.
Just in, we don't need that much exposition. We don't need that much time for this. We get that she is dancing for Kong based on her vaudeville dance. We don't need to see her whole freaking routine with the juggling and the flips and the stick and everything. No, we don't need all of that. Trim it down a little bit there. You know, what do you always tell me? Kill your babies?
Kill your darlings.
Kill your darlings.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. And I thought about it mostly when they were on Skull Island. I was like, look, you're going to do a lot of this stuff in a movie, Skull Island, down the road. He's not, but someone else did. Mm-hmm. And there's too much stuff going on in Skull Island. Like, for instance, the canyon scene with the insects. Mm-hmm. You know, the grasshoppers or whatever those things were would have been enough.
Yep.
And then maybe a big baddie like a spider. But they had to have those weird worm things that swallow that guy's head. They had so many other things going on. I was like, you don't need all this. You know, instead of one T-Rex versus King Kong, it's 3.
Yeah, way too much.
Way too much. But I still enjoyed the movie. And if I was a kid, I would have freaking loved it because it is just... you could tell, like you said how much he loves the original.
Instead of one brontosaurus, there's a brontosaurus stampede that goes on way too freaking long.
I didn't like that
totally at all. Implausible.
Yeah,
totally
I did not
implausible.
like that. I would, if I had to weigh this on a scale, I think that the homage and the love for the original movie is what carries me through watching this. But there are a lot of improbabilities and stuff. And that stampede scene was made
ridiculous.
It was made 20 years after Jurassic Park. And the one in Jurassic Park looks more real than that one.
Oh, yeah.
In King Kong. Yeah. It is so fake looking. And it did bother me a lot.
Well, I saved 2 points. One, I saved one quote because it came off of that documentary I liked, but it was a quote from Siskel and Ebert that said, "Stop animation looks fake but feels real. CGI looks real but feels fake." And I thought, that is so true.
Yeah,
it is so true. And then my other one is an actual quote from Peter Jackson where he talked about the movie and process, because it was supposed to be done in 97. They were originally going to do this movie back in 95 or 97.
And then Lord of the Rings came along. Yeah.
And he said, I don't want to remake the original. I don't want to modernize the original. I want to tell the same story with modern technology. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, that's his premise. That's his vision for it. And that actually, to me, works. He does do that pretty well. He uses all the resources at the time.
1933. The fact that it's a period piece movie is wonderful. I love that.
Yes. And he does all of the toys and tricks that he could possibly do, from CGI to, in CGI, everything. And this movie is almost exclusively CGI. Yeah. I don't think there's matte paintings and or miniature work, anything else in this. I think this is all Weta CGI. So,
and there's no telling how much work he put into this, because as you said, that 1996 version, he had already spent 9 months working on it before it got pushed to the side for him to do Lord of the Rings. Yeah, exactly. And then so he came back already having 9 months work put into it, and then put in God knows how much before it came out.
Yeah, when this movie came out, it was one of the most expensive movies ever made.
I'm not surprised.
It started with an original budget of 150. It ballooned to like 201, 210 million, and 35 of that was Peter Jackson's own money. He put
Wow.
up his own money to finish it and to get it. But it recouped it. It did the same thing the original did. It was a huge blockbuster at the time. Made
Wow.
a lot of money. So so they recouped it all, but it was just too long. It's too freaking long.
And I should have prefaced this before we started, but this is our second Peter Jackson feature this season. We had never covered him, and then we did
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings back in January, and here we are doing King Kong now.
Yep.
So he is moving up our list of directors.
Yep.
I'm sure we will see some more of him. Like Lord of the Rings, he had the same partners, Fran Walsh, who I believe is his wife, and
Yes.
Philippa Boyens, based on the story by Marion Cooper and Edgar Wallace.
Mhm.
I love, like you said, I will probably reiterate this 100 times. All the homage he pays to the original film is what stands out in this to me. Even the hokey delivery of Jack Black saying it was beauty that killed the beast at the end.
Hmm. I think what does work in this movie is he does take the time to flesh out the characters stronger.
Well, he
Some-
needed to because he added a ton of them.
Well, and
that I'm not sure
some-
were necessary.
Some of them for no reason. You know,
Right.
the black guy and the young kid reading Heart of Darkness. I was going, what's the point? Why? Nothing happens with them. He dies, and then the other kid you never see once they get to New York anyway. Nothing happens with them.
Why
So
Adrian Brody being the writer? Is it because
Well,
he
because
wasn't?
he's the love interest.
I know, but it could have been the first mate again. Why did they have to change that? Because it comes into the script later that he wrote a play for her, and that's it, right?
Yeah. Why give so much emphasis to Jack
that.
Black's assistant? And you know that sort of relationship
The
they have, or whatever.
Colin
And
Hanks character, yeah.
yeah.
I'm not sure.
But I loved the stuff, the backstory he gave Anne, and all the vaudeville stuff, and the fact
That was fine.
you know her mentor left her, and she's desperate, and she's even thinking of becoming a showgirl. Blah blah. All that works. I like seeing Jack being at odds with the studio, and the studio saying, "Fire this guy. He's sucked." So now I've got to get out of town really quick. So I thought all of that worked.
And they did the same Apple scene that they did with Fay Ray, where she's hungry and she's got no money, so she's about to steal an apple. That was great.
Yeah. When they actually shoot footage on the ship, it's dialogue from the original movie, which I thought was great. That was a cool homage. I liked the cookie character, or whatever, the Sir Andy Serkis character, the one that was the one-eyed Popeye.
Yeah, he came out of nowhere.
Well, I found out in research talking about keys, they based some of the screenplay on Delos W. Lovelace's novelization of King Kong, which included a character named Lumpy, who is the Andy Serkis character. So that's why Boyens and Walsh put that character in the movie. Was, as again, an homage to the original novelization.
I was thinking, you know, he said, if you'll agree to do King Kong, I'll give you a speaking role in the movie
I'll
as
give
well.
you a speaking role. So you can do that. I thought you talked about the 33 version with the natives. Holy crap. The natives in this terrified me. That was scary. That was, especially the fact that it started raining right before the attack.
Right.
That added to it.
Maybe I'm mixing up the two. Maybe I'm thinking of this one then.
Okay. In the first one, they're doing the big dance ceremony.
Right.
And they sneak up on them, and then they get seen by the king, and then suddenly they're ambushed.
You're right. I'm mixing them up.
In this one, it's deserted. And
there's nobody around, and they're
then
hiding.
Suddenly they see that one little girl. Yeah.
So I'm sorry. I totally mixed the movies up. This is the one where the natives are really, really scary.
Golly, yeah. I mean, bones in their nose. I mean, stuff, and they're stabbing, and then they clubbing the people on the sacrificial rock.
Yeah. I had totally forgot about that. And she's the one that sends him back to get that girl off the boat,
Right.
the witch woman or whatever,
And they do the whole pole vault over the reefs thing to
which is
get to the
cool.
boat.
Yeah, that was cool. Very Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense that then you suddenly drag her through all these rapids or whatever, surf and smashing rocks back. Yeah, right, sure.
Yeah, and all
Whatever.
the stuff with the ship smashing up onto that rock. That ship would never sail again. And he's like, fix it. I
No.
want it out of here in the morning.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
We
what?
got to be gone by sunrise. Yeah, no, what?
That's crazy. Crazy.
I've got
I
to
got a
have 30
little bit
minutes.
of background info. It was Peter Jackson's favorite film. So that's one of the reasons why he wanted to remake it. It was
Makes sense.
budgeted at an estimated $207 million, and its gross in US and Canada was $218 million. Its opening weekend, it did 50 million. And its
Yeah.
gross worldwide is 556 million, 906,000.
Fourth highest grossing film in Universal Pictures history.
I had no idea. When it came out, I was like, oh, yeah, another King Kong movie. I just didn't really care to go see it. I'm glad I watched it now.
I'm glad you did too. I mean, again, a lot of it has to do with Andy Serkis. He is brilliant as Kong.
Yeah.
And the subtleties that he plays, especially in that scene where essentially to me, it's the enchantment scene. It's when he starts really caring about Anne, and it's where Anne sees the more human side of him. And it's when she's entertaining him and dancing, and all the way he does it with the, I'm not going to look at you. No, I don't care. Okay, well, okay, well, yeah, that's funny. Yeah, and then he starts laughing, and then he starts making her do it, and finally she reaches the point where she goes, no, I'm not doing it anymore. And he goes, no, I'm mad. And he goes,
and that rock falls and hits him on the head. Yeah, very funny.
And then he goes over and sulks and everything. He's so expressive. And if you look at a documentary of this, they actually shot stuff where he was up on a great big scaffold so that he would be the right eye line for her when they were shooting her. But she could actually see Andy's face and see his reactions. And she says that, Naomi Watts said that meant a lot to her to be able to physically see him, not just in a big green dummy or whatever, to be able to see Andy's expressions. And she was acting to him. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. And they lifted some of that stuff from the remake with Jessica Lange too, because there's some funny stuff. Of course, it's done with a robotic hand, but it's, the finger pushing her or the finger trying to pull her dress down a little bit. They did all that stuff in the 1976 version. Scenes? Should I say there's too many?
All of them are too long?
Yeah, there are too many and they're too long.
my first one is going to be the ending. This ending even more so than the original. It is, I mean, you can literally see Kong die in this one. Because his eye almost glazes over.
Yeah, it's very sad.
And it's after he's done the whole, beautiful thing. The only word she teaches him is beautiful, because they're watching the sunset together on the island, and now they're watching the sunset. But so that scene, very impactful for me, very emotional. Even with Jack Black's A, miscasting, but B, horrible line reading at the end.
It doesn't work. I was like, it just threw me out when I saw it. I don't know why.
Yeah. The original,
it works in the first one.
Yeah, because he says it, I think, with this subtext of he's realizing it.
Yeah.
It wasn't the plane.
And where Jack's doing it, it's like, oh, I have the best line in the movie.
I'm a showman. Yeah. This will make a great catchphrase. No, it doesn't work. Well, and I think he's miscast from the very beginning.
I totally agree, and we'll get to that in casting because he was not first choice.
Well, good. Yeah. Sadly. So more scenes.
I'm going to say the canyon scene because I not the stampede, but the bugs, because when I go into a King Kong movie, and I mentioned this in the first one, I don't think about, prehistoric creatures and giant bugs. I just think about the big guy. So when you start throwing in other monsters, oh yeah, man, I'm there. I am totally into that. And that canyon scene is great. And they even don't they do the thing where he climbs up and he's reaching down again? I think they do that again.
Oh, yeah.
They
Yeah.
repeat a lot of the same shots from the first movie in this.
Yeah, the whole log sequence is there. It's just at this time they fall on vines.
And it's too long. Yeah.
But the whole reach down is there. The pterodactyls are not pterodactyl in this, they're bats. And he fights off all the little bats that are flying around.
And I like that Adrian Brody ends up on the opposite side of the crevice when they finally get out.
Yep.
I think that's cool because they realize, oh, he's not going back. He's still going to go try to rescue her. And they're like, we're out of here. There's too many awful things here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, anybody who survived that canyon battle, I don't see how. Because again, you talked about, stretching realism or whatever. Kid has a machine gun that he's never fired. Kid who was reading the Heart of Darkness has a machine gun he's
Jamie
never fired.
Bell's his name. I can't remember what his character's name is.
And
it's
Brody's character is covered in crickets or whatever those things were. They're not gnashing him to pieces, which I don't understand. But so he just starts shooting and shoots all of them, but never hits him.
I know.
And he is covered in these bugs. And it happens over and over, like three different times.
It's stupid.
I'm like going, this doesn't work. And then suddenly these guys from the parallel bank up top with all their machine guns can kill everything in that canyon? I don't think so.
And let me ask you this. This really, really bothered me. But the Kyle Chandler character, who is like the egotistical movie star. Yeah. He's the first to turn around and say, I'm out of here. I'm not going to do anything with these natives. I'm a coward, whatever. But does he not swing in on a vine with a machine gun and start shooting? I'm like, that totally contradicts his character. Why would you do that?
And if you then said, okay, he reached his point where he can become a hero, because he also runs away from the brontosauruses first, remember?
Right.
But so you reach this point where he swings down with his machine gun blazing to start saving them. Okay, cool. But then later on in New York, when he realizes Kong is freaking out, he leaves. He pushes through all the reporters going, coming through, and he's a coward.
Yeah.
So why would he change
It's almost like the scenario behind the scenes in my head is Kyle Chandler's pissed because he's not got enough screen time. So Peter Jackson said, okay, you can swing in with a machine gun. And I'm like, well, you should have at least given him another scene that did not contradict his character, because it just made no sense to me. I was like, wait, was that Kyle Chandler? Because it's so fast, I had to go back, and I still couldn't really tell if it was him or not.
Yep. Yeah. Because I was, when it first happened, I did the same thing. Because when it first happened, I thought, oh, okay, because this is the part where the XO comes down and helps him. And I went, oh, that's not the XO. That's a freaking actor guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. The XO is still on the bank.
Yeah, he comes back with them. Like maybe he went to get the help or something. I don't know. It just sucked.
I don't know.
Yeah, I did not like that scene. And I will reiterate your complaint about scenes that are too long. The whole log scene is way too long. It's like, how long does it take to shake them off that thing?
Yeah. The log scene is too long. The T-Rexes is too long. There's too many of them. Plus the fact that there's not a feeling of peril in other than being knocked off. That's the feeling you get. Jackson does a lot with weight. He's always done a really good thing, even in all the Lord of the Rings movies, with weight and height. And he does that very well. But I mean, these things keep chomping on freaking Kong's arms or neck or whatever. And there's no blood. There's no nothing. There's no tear. I'm going, if a T-Rex bites your arm, probably going to hurt.
And there is one point where he yells almost.
Well, yeah, he makes that. But then we don't see any damage.
No.
And after it's over.
Yeah. After you'll see scrapes on him, but you don't see it when it's happening at all.
But that goes on too long. When they get to New York, the whole car chase through the city goes on too long.
And it's so improbable that everything would end with right where Ann Darrow is standing in the street. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah,
not
that one.
probable.
I went, that one didn't
It's
work
New
at
York
all, dude.
City. It's very big.
Yeah, yeah. And they also happen to find the loneliest street in all of New York City, but there's not even
Right.
another person in the entire 3-block area.
Mm-mm.
I'm going, really?
And
Seriously,
also, King recognizes Adrian Brody in a car. I see you. I'm like, no.
Oh, yeah, you're the one that pisses me off.
You're the one that took her away from me. I'm like, I don't think so.
No, I didn't think that one would work either. No.
I didn't know we were going to tear this movie apart. But I do like it and I enjoy it. But like you said, it needs a big edit. A big edit.
Yeah, and like even the chloroforming scene, instead of it being just, because they use chloroform, not gas bombs in this one, but
right.
Even that scene, we get him right beside the wall. Then he almost passes out. Then he gets up. Then he's chasing us to the beach, and then we're doing it more. And then but I do like the very final moment when Denham actually hits him in the nose.
Yeah.
And the way he suddenly reacts and falls and everything, you feel very sad. You're like going, that is not the way to treat an animal.
And it would be Denham to do that because it is his goal to capture him. No one else cares. Right. So I could live with that. But it did go on again way too long. Mm-hmm. I liked when he has her in the cave at the beginning and she tries to crawl away and she goes toward this rock and this spider thing starts coming out from under it and she's trying not to scream and she runs like behind another rock because it was a good preface for the insect things to come. It was like, okay, there was something under that rock. I don't know what it was. I just saw a little bit of it, but I don't want to see any more.
I also have in my notes to tell Tim that was one of the best jump scares I have seen in a while.
That spider scene?
No, that scene you're talking about, because they're up here on the ledge. She goes into the cave and gets away, sees the spider thing, goes away from it, is almost free, and all of a sudden that foot goes right in front of her. And I went, I jumped and went, okay, that's one of the best jump scares I've had in a while.
Yeah, I think the spider thing scared me more than that. If I'd have been that close to that thing, I would have been like, ooh. And you only see like 3 legs. That's all you see, but it's all you need to see.
Yeah.
That he should have learned from that, instead of showing so much with those head-sucking worms or whatever they were. All right, we've gone on enough. Well, I guess we go on to cast maybe real quick.
Sure.
All right. Real quick. Listen, there's more cast in this movie than there was in the first. All right, we have Naomi Watts, who plays Ann Darrow. I love Naomi Watts. I have a strange connection to her. Back when Dennis and I first started dating in the around 2003, I had a dream that me and Dennis were at a bar, and Naomi Watts was our bartender, and we became friends. So whenever I see Naomi Watts in something, I look at Dennis and say, it's our friend, Naomi Watts.
Okay.
So I don't know why, but Naomi Watts is my friend in my dreams. Anyway, she was in Mulholland Drive, of course, The Ring, which is what I remember her most from, and also a remake of Funny Games, which is not as good as the original foreign film. But I did not know this. Her dad, Peter Watts, was Pink Floyd's road manager.
I didn't know that either.
That is crazy. So when she was a little girl, she was probably on Pink Floyd tours.
Dang.
That would have been awesome.
That would have been awesome.
Yeah. As I mentioned, she played Ann Darrow. She states when she was offered the part in the film, she contacted David Lynch for advice. And he told her, anyone who sits in the hand of King Kong will be a movie star for life.
Yep.
So she immediately took the part.
So far, 3 for 3. Yeah.
Yeah. Other people. Natalie Portman screen tested for the role of Ann Darrow. She was deemed too young for the part.
Agreed.
Rachel McAdams was considered for the role.
Ooh.
I mean, they're all brunettes, but neither was Fay Wray, so she wasn't a blonde. And then when planned to be released in 1998, Kate Winslet was the first choice.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, probably because of Titanic, I imagine. And that's all I have for her. I'm glad Naomi got the part. I like Naomi. She's my bud.
He's great.
Yeah. Carl Denham was played by Jack Black. I feel a little opposed to this. I don't think he was cast that well. Sorry, Jack. We know him from Mars Attacks, which we covered earlier this year. And of course, he was in School of Rock. He's more of a comic actor, which I don't have a problem with. He was in that rock comedy band, Tenacious D. Did you know his parents were rocket scientists?
Yes, I did know that.
I didn't know that. That's weird. I thought we would have mentioned that when we did Mars Attacks.
And I also have in my notes.
Go ahead. I was going to say one of his closest friends is Dave Grohl, who is one of my favorite musicians.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have in my notes that he, for inspiration for his portrayal of Carl Denham, he used Orson Welles. And not just Orson Welles, the entrepreneur, but Orson Welles later on in life, the salesman, showman, wine guy.
Before its time.
Trying to do whatever he can to get his vision out there, conning people and all of that. And I could understand that, but he was not a good choice for this. Denham's a hard character because he's almost a villain at times.
Yeah, he is.
And you need to be able to play the villain being a realistic villain, and Jack Black doesn't play him realistic. He plays him as a comic villain.
He's Snidely Whiplash.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very true.
Very
and that's unfortunate because you need a much more expressive actor who's able to show a lot more subtly, I think. To play Denham.
That's a great segue because you know who Jackson originally wanted to play the part?
Who?
Robert De Niro.
Interesting. If he could do the sentimentality at the end, that would work because he's brusque. He's
a little rough. Yeah. He also wanted George Clooney.
Oh, I could easily see that because he can do. I've seen Clooney as a villain before and as he could do it.
Yes. Well, and he can also be a smarmy salesman too.
Oh God, yeah, he would have been excellent.
Yeah, he would have been excellent. Another choice that surprised me, of course, he would have been a lot younger at the time, was Ian McKellen. Yeah. He was offered to Ian McKellen and he turned it down because he was doing a play in London at the time. So
I can see that. I can see him do it as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Or, he's got the chops. I mean, I equate him with Patrick Stewart, they're both up there.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, we ended up with Jack Black. Jack Driscoll, on the other hand, is no longer a first mate. He's a writer, and he's played by Adrian Brody from The Pianist and The Village. I don't know much about Adrian Brody. I don't think I've seen a lot of his films.
He's adequate. He's good. He's okay. I don't know why again, to your point originally, I don't know why they added that character.
I don't know
why they needed to feel that they needed someone other than the XO.
Well, they have that whole thing where they don't get together and he goes on with his life and she goes on with hers and then they reunite and he's at this play that he wrote for her and she's not in it. And I'm like, why are we watching this? I just don't care. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like he did it to lengthen the screenplay or something. Or I guess, when you get name actors, they want to have more time on screen. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I don't know why they needed that denouement at the climax with their characters anyway, because they don't get a last scene together.
Not really.
They
don't, because her love is Kong.
Right. And we just shot him off the tower.
Yeah. I did have a trivia on him. He is the youngest actor. He replaced Richard Dreyfuss as the youngest actor to ever win Best Actor Academy Award. Oh, really? Dreyfuss had won it for Goodbye Girl, then Brody won it for The Pianist.
Huh.
Isn't that a Polanski movie? I've never seen it.
Yes.
Okay. According to IMDb, Brody was the first and only choice for Jack Driscoll. Don't ask me why. I would think you would want more of a leading man, like a romantic leading man. He doesn't look like a romantic leading man to me.
No, not at all.
No. Anyway, Captain Englehorn was played by Thomas Kretschmann. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Familiar face. He was in The Pianist as well as Resident Evil Apocalypse. I don't know if you watch those movies.
No.
He looks like a Game of Thrones actor to me, but I don't know because I haven't seen Game of Thrones.
Now is that the captain of the ship or the first mate guy?
The captain, Captain Englehorn.
Okay.
Yeah. Same names from the first movie. Colin Hanks played Preston, who was the like gopher of Jack Black, I guess you would say. We know him from The Good Guys and Roswell. He's Tom Hanks' son, obviously. His mother was Samantha Lewis, who died of bone cancer. So it's not Rita Wilson's son, but her stepson. And he looks a lot like Tom Hanks. But yeah, like you said, his part was very small. Next, we have Andy Serkis. We're all familiar with Andy Serkis. He is a motion capture. He is, I guess, god of the motion capture. How do you say that? Motion capture actors.
If you're in the industry, you say mocap. That's what they say. I see it all the time.
There you go.
Seriously, they do. Who's doing the mocap for that? Oh, okay. Well, this guy. Yeah.
So the cool kids call it mocap. We
We
know him from Lord of the Rings. He played Gollum, and Rise of the Planet of the Apes, where he played Caesar. And he is very good at emoting. And also, as we mentioned, had a part in here called Lumpy that was actually a human part. So he plays two parts.
He also is MCU. He was big in Black Panther.
Sure was.
And in Age of Ultron, he plays the vibranium black market guy.
He's like I don't know what it is.
I mean,
but yeah, he deals with vibranium, illegal vibranium or whatever.
Illegal.
Yeah.
He's stolen it from Wakanda.
Right.
And had you heard of Serkis before Lord of the Rings?
First thing I'd ever heard of him for.
And was so amazing in that. I did do some research and found out that for this one, as soon as he was cast, he started going almost daily to the London Zoo. And he would just hang out and watch the gorillas, of course.
Right.
And then they sent him to Rwanda for like over a month to watch silverbacks in the wild.
It's so funny. That was my next note that I was going to say.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just how he studied the mannerisms of gorillas. And like you said, he was going to a local zoo in London, and he befriended a female gorilla there named Zaire. Zaire. Yeah. But then, like you said, he also went to Rwanda as well.
Spent months and months just researching and doing, because from what I've got from production notes, he and Jackson both wanted Kong to not be human. They wanted him to generally be a gorilla with human expressions. And so to capture the expressions, every day it took him 2 hours of makeup. Even though it's mocap or motion capture, he had to spend 2 hours in makeup every day just putting the little markers on his face, like 130 of them.
That's crazy.
Where they had to go just on his face, 130 dots on your face and neck. And then I have, just like in the first one, Ann Darrow or Fay Ray finished and then had to go into 2 days of screaming and then didn't do anything for, X number of months until the movie was released. Serkis, after principal photography, had to spend 2 months on the motion capture stage, just doing all of the digital animations for Kong.
Do you think they treat it like a spa? Like he just goes in and lays down and they play really soft music and gently touch his face with these things?
Probably something like that. They have to for these extensive makeups. Like we did earlier this season, we did Illustrated Man, and it turns out that was the longest makeup application ever in history. Every time you had to do it.
Because they had to paint his whole body. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like 18 hours of stuff. I mean, you would have to zen somehow to do that. We've talked about Freddie or Robert Englund and having to put on that amount of makeup every freaking day.
That's a lot.
That's yeah. And so I think you would have to zen somehow to be able to do it.
Right.
Especially like, with all the costume characters that are out now, all the Marvels, like look at what's her name? A Nebula. With all the makeup
she's completely
she has
animated, just about. Yeah.
Well, but no, but they really do make up her face with the same thing with Vision. Vision has a lot of the same makeup to get rid of
Yeah,
his
I think I've
ears
seen raw
and to
footage of
do all
that,
that.
if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. Yeah.
But
Maybe he
yeah,
gets
and
foot
then
rubs too or something.
and you get all that stuff done to you, and now it's suddenly throw you out on the stage. Okay, go act. Emote now.
Yeah.
And usually he's by himself. That's the thing that surprises me about Circus is a lot of his stuff is done, you know, him in a studio by himself doing the scenes.
Well, I would think Naomi worked with him since he worked with her.
Well, I mentioned that earlier. Yes,
Yeah.
for her scenes, he would be there for her,
Right.
but they're
That's
not
what I'm talking
shooting
about.
him. It's just his face up there. They're not filming him.
Mm.
So when they're filming his reactions, Naomi wasn't there. It was just him reacting to her, to a tennis ball or
That's
whatever.
mean. If he did it for her, she should do it for him.
They're not
that's
paying her double.
Oh, that's right. They may have to pay her if I didn't think about that. But usually
Of
don't they
course.
sign a contract for a lump sum
Maybe.
or
I mean, I think it
an
would depend
agreement to
on,
have like royalties or something?
yeah, it
Yeah.
depends on your whole contract. There's lots of
Right.
details for that. But
Yeah.
Circus
Naomi
in a
has
lot of
an exclusion clause. I do not do the motion cap scenes or whatever.
yeah, right. But he is so brilliant. And I also like him in his live actions. I think Lumpy's a little bit cartoony. It's almost like a Popeye
I
character.
thought so too. Yeah.
But I like him when he does play the villains or, a human instead
Yeah.
of just doing motion
Yeah, he can
culture.
do both, quite obviously.
Yeah,
and I
very
told you
well.
that Naomi's a friend of mine, so I know she would have done that for him anyway. So,
You should have just called her up and said,
yeah.
Naomi, what's up, baby?
A couple of others that I have, Kyle Chandler, as I said, played Bruce Baxter. He's got a great character because he is the one, he's like a villain because he's just a vain asshole, basically.
Yeah.
All he cares about is his image.
Yep.
Excuse me. They even have him like admiring he puts his own posters up on his walls so that he can see himself. And then the only other character I took note of was Jamie Bell, who played Jimmy. He was the one that had the close relationship with, I don't have him in here, I don't think.
Oh, he's the guy that was reading Heart of Darkness. The
Right.
kid.
They were like literary buds, I guess you would say. And when I saw Jamie, I was like, oh, that's the guy that plays Spider-Man, that Tom Holland guy or whatever.
Mm-mm.
And I was like, wait a minute. This movie is 20 years old. That guy would be a little kid. That can't be him. So I looked him up, and he's the guy that played Billy Elliot.
On Broadway?
I think
Or in
in
the
the
movie?
movie.
Okay.
And he also played Bernie Taupin in the Elton John biop.
Wow. Okay.
Or biography, excuse me. Yeah, so he was a kid actor, and I guess that's why I recognized him. But he does favor that guy that plays Spider-Man now a lot.
Yes, he does. He has a lot of the eye and chin structure of Tom Holland.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could see that.
And then that's all I have for cast, but I do have some information on awards. This movie won 3 Oscars. It won sound mixing, sound editing, and visual effects. No surprise there.
Nope.
It was nominated for art direction. The Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror gave it 2 for Naomi Watts as actress and Peter Jackson as director. And they nominated it for Best Film and Writing. And it is not on the 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die list. And I'm not surprised at that.
I'm not surprised at that, since it was a remake, essentially, in the best sense of the word. I guess I could say that for that one. So, yeah, I'm torn on it. I would recommend this movie. I think it's a good movie. I just think it needs an edit of about 45 to 50 minutes.
Totally agree. And the original King Kong is on the list. And that, to me, is so far the king of all Kongs. So,
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, I've got a little bit of trivia before we do our final keys and stuff.
Sure.
I found 2 that I thought you would really like. One was Peter Jackson and Rick Baker. Rick Baker actually did the makeup for this movie, even though
he did the 76 one and this one.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Although he didn't do any, he wasn't acting in this one. He wasn't Kong in this one, of course, but he did makeup, specialty makeup, all the effects makeup and stuff for this. But Peter Jackson and Rick Baker are one of the biplanes at the end, the pilot and gunner. They play those cameos of the guy shooting at Kong. And the reason they did it was because if you go back and watch the original Kong, Cooper and Schoedstack played one of the pilots and one of the gunners in one of the planes.
How funny. So,
Yep.
I mean, a lot of my notes, and I didn't keep these notes because there were so many, are basically homage type things like that.
Yeah. Yes.
And you can see them sometimes when you're watching it, you'll catch it. Like, did you notice they used the same background as the overture for the credits of this?
Yes. And the same credits, that same font and everything.
Right.
That gold.
It looks like very Art Deco from the 20s or 30s. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that blew my mind.
And they used the same poster digital design for the Eighth Wonder of the World, King Kong, blah, 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 Denham's monster. Anyway, so I had that is two cameos. Another cameo, Rick Porras, who was an executive producer for Lord of the Rings, and Frank Darabont are two other pilot and gunners in the scene.
So they just flew down to New Zealand to see what was going on?
Or they just, Peter said, "Hey, Frank, I want to put you in this. Come on."
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How funny.
And then Howard Shore, although there was a big creative falling out and everything else, he is the conductor in the New York theater scene. He has a cameo as the actual conductor of the orchestra for Denham's show of Kong. I thought those were cool cameos that were in there.
Those are cool cameos. I have a little bit of trivia as well.
Yeah.
It took 18 months to craft the CGI version of the Empire State Building. The real Empire State Building was built in 14 months.
What does that say?
I know. I mean, that's it makes you think. And then, of course, at the very end of the closing credits, it's dedicated to the original explorers of Skull Island, followed by the names and actors and actresses who played the roles in 1933.
That's great.
Cooper and them. Yeah, I think that's great too.
That's a great homage. I have in my watch notes the guy that played the XO, not the captain, but the other guy. I have in my notes, is this like Liam Neeson's brother or something? He looked so much to me like Liam Neeson.
Which one?
The not the captain, but the other one that comes to the rescue. The one that in the original was her love interest, but now we have Adrian Brody as her love interest.
Yeah, I don't really remember what he looked like, but okay.
He had the blue eyes and he had the striking jaw and everything was like, you shouldn't be here, you're a woman. Same character as the original.
Have you taken my daughter?
Yeah. I will find you, Kong. And I will.
We were talking about Andy Serkis and his work with gorillas in preparation for this movie. Since there were no gorillas in any zoo in New Zealand for the production team to study, the nearest is in Australia. Michael Apted came to the rescue by letting them study over 20 hours of research footage he shot while preparing Gorillas in the Mist.
That's awesome.
I thought so too, because I love that movie. That's a great movie.
Oh yeah,
with Sigourney Weaver.
Sigourney Weaver? Yeah,
yeah. So he had a lot of just, I guess, footage, research footage that he just let them borrow. And then I think, I don't even want. Well, all right, I will say this since we've been talking about how way too long this movie is. Considering it could have been longer. Because according to the book, The Making of King Kong, there was a scene written in film where Denham, Driscoll, and the SS Venture crew build rafts to cross the swamp only to be attacked by an aquatic creature called a piranodon.
Ooh, yeah.
This scene ended up being included in the extended edition of the film. There were also mentions of a scene where Lumpy the cook shoots a large flightless bird.
Okay.
So it could have been even longer, which, not good.
I have to say, one of my favorite scenes, just because it's clever dialogue, it's an homage, it's wink, wink, and everything else, is the scene near the beginning when Jack and his Preston is his assistant or whomever. Anyway, he's making plans. He's doing that scattergun, shotgun dialogue. We've got to get to the boat. We got to do this, da, da, da. And they're trying to find a leading lady because whatever her name was, I can't remember right now, quit. She didn't want to go on the trip with them. And Preston at one point says, well, no, you can't cast so-and-so because whoever you cast has to fit into so-and-so's costumes. She has to be a size 4. And I've got in my notes that then Denham responds, wait, Faye is a size 4. And Preston says, no, you can't use her. She's shooting some movie at RKO. And then it cuts back to Denham and he goes, Cooper, right? Yeah, I might have known that guy. And then it cuts and I went, okay, to me, that's a way to do an homage to the original that if you know it, you know it. But if you don't, it's okay. It's still okay dialogue.
Yeah, that's why I said I didn't write them all down. But if you know it, watching it, you catch all this stuff, including the design of the fonts and the credits and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously, again, what we said from the very beginning, obviously the thing about Peter Jackson was he did love the source material. You know, we have covered on the podcast before remakes where people obviously didn't. They wanted to change it, to mutate it, to augment it, to do whatever. And this is a guy who, exactly what we said at the beginning, he said, I don't want to remake it. I want to redo it with modern technology.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I neglected to mention, I said that I didn't have this actor in my notes, but I do. Jimmy's buddy with the Heart of Darkness reading his name was Hayes. He was played by Evan Park. And he's a very good African-American actor. However, he had one of my favorite deaths because Kong basically flings him across the ravine and he slams into a tree. And then kind of peels off and falls into the canyon like a Warner Brothers cartoon. I mean, it's like Wile E. Coyote. There's a key.
Oh, yeah. And it's abrupt. It's abrupt. I mean, we know it's coming. And again, that's one of those that, why spend so much time on these two guys and then have his death be that way and Billy or whoever, the kid, just literally disappear for the last act.
Yeah.
You know, and nothing happens with it.
And I was trying to think of other secondary characters. The cameraman buys it as he's trying to hand the camera to Denham and he gets pulled down.
A velociraptor bites him or whatever.
Yeah, he gets like a velociraptor attack. And then who is the one that gets his head sucked by the giant leech things down in the pit? Is it Lumpy?
Circus.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah,
okay,
that's how he dies.
Yeah, so I guess maybe he wanted extra characters like a horror movie, so he could just have weird murders or deaths.
Yeah, but as we have said, dozens of times on this, if you're not emotionally invested in the characters, their deaths don't really matter.
No, they might as well be extras.
A special effect.
Yeah.
And we didn't like Lumpy was such a caricature, unfortunately, by Circus that I think it. We don't have emotional investment in it. Hayes is really good. I mean, we like that character. Mm-hmm. We like his fatherliness toward Billy,
which is all intentional, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And all of that works really well. And they have this cool relationship. And then suddenly, boom, we're done.
Yeah.
And nothing happens from it. So I thought that was a misstep, I guess.
No, I agree. And if we're going to move on to keys, basically all of mine are the same ones we mentioned already.
Exactly. I mean, Jurassic Park, Planet of the Apes, for CGI, all the stuff we mentioned already.
Yeah, any King Kong movie, The Most Dangerous Game. Basically, did you have any different? I just mentioned Wile E. Coyote.
That's one.
I mean, that's what it reminded me of.
I did have that. They went back to the original source material. So they studied not only King Kong, but anything from the studio that they could get on it, from the stills of the spider to old screenplays to anything else from the Cooper estate and the Showed Stack, anything that they had. I also have that they looked at, where was it? Hold on, let me find it in my notes real quick, because it was a couple of references that they did that I thought were interesting when they were writing the screenplay. Let me see if I can find it here. They studied a guy, and he was a vaudeville artist, and they studied his work specifically or her work specifically for Ann Darrow's character. Oh,
It was a female
Jackson
vaudeville.
Jackson optioned Early Havoc. That's the title, Early Havoc, a memoir written by vaudeville performer June Havoc, to help Walsh and Boyens flesh out Ann Darrow's characterization. So they did that. They visited Forrest Forey Ackerman's estate and Famous Monsters of Filmland, because he had a lot of these never before seen stills and memorabilia and everything. And Peter Jackson, I guess there's a key. Peter Jackson is a key from the original. Peter Jackson actually has one of the skeletal models that Willis O'Brien used. It's not Kong. It's probably the T-Rex,
I would
or
think.
the
Pterodactyl.
Brontosaurus.
Yeah.
Pterodactyl, one of those. But he actually owns it, which I
Not
thought was cool.
surprising. I mean, he's a geek like we are.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he said, I mean, in research, I found that he said he first saw King Kong when he was 6 years old. So,
You know, I was probably that young because, like I said, I saw it on television late at night, like on Shock Theater.
yeah.
I mean, Shock Theater used to start at like, I don't know, 11:30 after the news on Fridays or Saturdays. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think direct keys from this one we have to mention are Skull Island, which was the sequel essentially to this, right? You know,
well,
I mean,
one of them, did Godzilla versus King Kong come first? I can't remember.
no, Skull Island, I think, came first.
Okay.
And then Godzilla versus
Kong.
because hang on to my notes. We'll make a quick.
Now, there's one
Warner Brothers rebooted the franchise with Kong, semicolon, Skull Island in 2017, which was part of what they wanted to call the Monsterverse of Warner Brothers.
Right.
And they then did, in 2021, they did Godzilla versus Kong.
Okay.
So,
and then somewhere, if I'm not mistaken, they remade Destroy All Monsters, didn't they? Or is that not I could have sworn they remade that movie.
That one I don't know if they did.
It's one of the fan favorites of Godzilla fans, because not only does it have Godzilla, it has all of the monsters like Mothra, Rodan, Ghidorah, and they all, you know, Godzilla's obviously the good guy fighting everyone else or whatever. I can't remember if Kong's in it or not, but I remember watching that movie as a kid, and I thought they had remade it, but maybe not. I will put it in the notes if it is out there, or you can let us know, because we're idiots. Yeah, just
because we don't have it in our notes.
Tim, you fucking idiot. Destroy All Monsters came out this year.
We said in the original keys from the original, that Universal then went on and did a huge, you know, theme park experience with a life-size freaking Kong skull and arms and everything that ended up, unfortunately, being in a fire and burning down. But it was a really impressive ride for a while. They went on to do an attraction called Skull Island Reign of Kong at Islands of Adventure, Universal Orlando. And they did that after Peter Jackson's, inspired by his movie.
Okay. Yeah, I need to get down there and see that. I may have seen it. I haven't been to Universal since, I don't know, like 2006 or something.
Tim, you need to go. It's so much better than the Mouse. I mean,
I don't know about that, but
well, to each their own. But
the Mouse has Tron, and it also has Cosmic Rewind.
Yeah, but Universal has Harry Potter. So
I don't need any weird jelly beans.
You need your wand, Tim. You always need a good wand.
So I guess that's going to sum it up. I mean, clearly, and we will tell all of you out there, watch the original. The original is where it's at. I mean, maybe the natives are not quite as scary, even though I confused them with the new one. It is still the definitive version of this movie. I think that's why our keys were all the same, too, because like you said, it wasn't a remake. It was a redo with modern effects and stuff. So that's
And it was
obviously why we have the same keys.
we said it. King Kong, the original, is probably one of the first original, quote, monster movies.
Mm-hmm.
Not a vampire or a werewolf. I mean, a true monster, being that it's a gorilla, but it was a scare. I hadn't thought about it till you mentioned it. It had to be terrifying when this movie came out.
Oh, yeah.
People had to be screaming from the theater with the gnawing on people and stomping them
and throwing them. Yeah. And picking up women and throwing them down. Yeah, it's hilarious. I mean, it's hilarious to us now, but as a kid, I would think it would be terrifying. And you mentioned monsters. Even if you don't think Kong is a monster because he's a giant ape, there are still other monsters on this island in both versions.
Creature features, man. Yeah. Come on.
So you've got dinosaurs and that type monster.
So that's what Tim and I think. We want to know what you guys think. Which of these versions did you like better? Do you prefer one to the other? Are we wrong for just skipping over the 76 version or whatever? We'd love to hear your guys' opinions, what you liked, what you didn't, what you disagree with, or what you agree with. Please leave a comment down below. Click the like, give us some stars, give us a review on Apple, do all the subscribe things, and just so we can continue to do this and hopefully get more and more people involved in doing it. If you want to see our entire oeuvre or lexicon of other episodes, you can go to the website and just pick a title that you like and see some of those. If you have a movie that you think we should review that's not on our list, let us know. We'd love to deep dive into viewer requests, and we're doing that at least a couple
we're
of times a
finalizing
year.
those right now, so hurry.
Yeah. So hurry. Yes. And we also have a Patreon channel, of course. If you guys do feel like you like listening to us and want to continue to help us and sponsor and support us, we would love to have you do that by going to our Patreon and picking a tier that you like, and you get some special stuff for doing that. Does that cover everything, Tim? You think?
I think so. Next week, or the season is winding down.
Yeah.
We've got 2, 4, 6, 7 movies left. Next week, we are going back to the science fiction land.
Yes.
A little more modern, though, than others that we've done here recently. So
should be interesting. Yeah. And well, until then, I'll see you then.
All righty. I'll see you.
All right.
Bye.
You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.